Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome back to the CeltsAreHere podcast. It's Declan and Quinny joining you for our first podcast of 2023, weekly pod. So we were on just before the bells, Quinny. Last week we did a kind of overview of 2022. And of course, coming back after the World Cup, everything's been fast moving. We've played, I think it's 5 games now since the return. Won 4 of them, drawn 1, the most recent being a 2-each draw at Ibrox. That'll be our main chat and focus today. But of course, in the news since then, there's been other chats. Celtic seem to be wanting to hold talks with the SFA about VAR. It's obviously coming from the game on Monday, which we'll talk about that particular instance involving Connor Goldson, probably as well as a penalty too that Rangers were given. We know that Giakoumakis is getting linked with a move away to Denmark. We'll have a chat about that and what that maybe means for any incomings at Celtic and some other possible transfer links and where Celtic might elsewhere be looking at in the transfer market. Quinny, first off, Celtic weren't at their best at all on Monday. 85 minutes, you're probably thinking to yourself, this is going to 6 points here. Not that you'd be too worried, I think, if it did, had it went to 6 points, but we rescued it. We retained our 9-point advantage, which again says a lot about the team's character, that when you have a bad game, that you still come out unscathed. And for me, when I get into the game, it was just important that Celtic left Ibrox with everything that's against you there. You've got 48 and whatever thousand against you. As we've seen, we've got John Beaton, Willie Collum, and everybody else. John Beaton, I say that because John Beaton, and there's a clip, and he says it's not up to me to make the decisions. So God knows who it's up to make the decisions to. So you've got everything against you in terms of the crowd and everything else. It was just important for me, Quinny, that we left Ibrox unscathed, whether that be with a victory or a draw. And to get the draw, to get it late on, I was fairly content with that.
Yeah, and I think I was supremely confident going into the game. Chatting last week, the only two things that you can caveat it with is if Rangers did find that Europa League kind of formula that they were doing of just like getting lucky and defending like mad, on top of the other jeopardy we've got in the league, like you say, the officials and maybe some VAR decisions that might go against us. So I think the best Rangers team kind of showed up that they're capable of producing. And I would probably say VAR did their most as well to not give us a penalty and make sure they got one at some point. So I think with all that considered, like you say, with the odds stacked against you, as it were, I think we can be relatively content with the draw given the actual performance that was laid out there. But I make you quite right. I think if we came away with a game and Kyogo never got the goal, they would be acting like they won a cup final probably, and they'd probably have this kind of delusion of maybe we can catch Celtic, but the strength and squad, we're talking about transfers, we'll get to that in the podcast as well, but I just don't see us getting a blip anywhere. It would need to be the best Rangers they could possibly put out and the officials to get them some sort of fortuitous result. Even I think the draw is fortuitous if you look at the season as a whole, but on the day, they you can't really argue they did their job. Kent's goal was good and whatever.
Yeah, Celtic got that early goal. We'll come on to talk about that because we know you and I like a conversation with Daizen Maeda, and I'm sure you were as delighted as me as when he put the ball in the net. But just in terms of kind of overall picture of it, the manager said after the game that he thought it was a good game of football. I actually thought in the second half it became a bit scrappy, and Celtic got to that level that Rangers like to get. They became dogged. They went 2-1 up. You could tell by the substitutes as if Michael Beale thought, yep, I've got Celtic here. We're winning the game. Scott Wright comes on for Alfredo Morelos, I think, rather than Cholak possibly coming on for that last 5 or 10 minutes. And then Sands come on. He's been featured mainly as a centre-back for Rangers, but he comes on and I think he just kind of sat in front of the back 4 or in a kind of 5 type thing. So you could see by the substitutes that Rangers thought, yep, we'll shut the back door here. Game's a bogey, but Celtic bounced back, which I think was very, very important. And as you say, in terms of a blip, it would have, it'd have been disappointing had you walked away from there. We know Celtic's only been beaten once in the league this season by St Mirren. It's an incredible run of games that we've been on. I think that's us either 12 or 13 games unbeaten in the league since that St Mirren game. It actually might be more now, which is a great run to be on. And we've seen that, Quinny, last season. I think if you were looking at it, after the Livingston game or even a draw at St Mirren last Christmas, when you were looking at the picture of it and thinking Celtic almost need to be perfect here to go on and win this league title. We've shown that form before. I'm pretty confident at this point in time. There's 13 games to go before the split. 8 of them are at Celtic Park. 5 of them are away from home. We're in a really, really good advantage just now.
Big time. And like the Daizen Maeda is the kind of the poster child of all this now, because the guys that are in form, Daizen and Moy in particular, and probably Kyogo to an extent as well, are players that half the fan base, at least, if not more, kind of wrote off in different spells, like they're not good enough to be best 11, or they're not going to help us when when push comes to shove or whatever. So to see those guys hitting form, Abada can't get in the team all of a sudden, Jota's a wee bit off it, Matt O'Reilly, should he start or should he not? So like the guys we would have as the best players are actually nowhere near form now, and all the guys that have been doing their part and taking minutes off the bench and whatever, they're the guys now. Like we heard the early season, Andrew was planning second half of the season for some guys to be peaking. And, some of those kind of lieutenants he's got in the squad, they're definitely doing that now. So when you factor that in, that hopefully, throughout the season at some point, Jota recaptures some form. Abada will get back into scoring the goals. Kyogo and everyone else, and then Matt O'Reilly and Rio Hatate. So, I think we're in a fantastic position. And we've got the components there to go into a lot of games and be close to perfect. We can get a couple of goals quite quickly. We've got the bench to keep the tempo high. We've got the bench to maybe change a little bit now, with some of the signings like Iwata coming in, and Johnston, and even Juranovic coming in at left back, which is a bit of a story in itself at the weekend, or Monday, I should say. But yeah, I think you're quite right in that respect, especially when we do go away, because not to sound like bitter and twisted or whatever, but there's a fair amount of referees that we don't enjoy seeing their name against the fixture. So when you add that in with the away supports and maybe nice camera angles, maybe they can hide one till full time or something on us or something, then it's a good bar for the squad to be set at, that nothing other than 100% gets us over the line, because you're playing against the team, you're playing against the fans, you're playing against this, you're playing against that. And I think I was really confused at first. I was taken aback when Ange came out after the game and said, "Oh, what a game for the neutral." Obviously, I'm not a neutral, but I was sitting there thinking, I don't agree with that. I don't think it was a great spectacle.
As I say, Quinny, I thought it became scrappy in that second half, and Celtic don't like it when it gets scrappy. I thought Rangers wanted it to become quite a scrappy game. They liked that stop-start. You could see it, that even the ball boys were trying to slow it down, because they'd probably been told, slow it down as much as possible. And just with the way the game was going, and the subs that Michael Beale brought on, it wasn't as if it was gung-ho completely. There were spells in the game that Celtic were the better team. There were spells in the game that Rangers became the better team. A draw was probably the even outcome, I think, towards the end of the game, in my opinion, even though Celtic weren't at their best. And that's because of a few kind of moments, particularly in the game and getting into the game, that I thought really had an impact on us. And the first of those is the bug. I don't think you would have seen, James Forrest start at Ibrox had it not been for that. As far as I'm aware, that Jota's had this now for something near enough 2 weeks. That's why you've not seen him consistently in the team. You don't know if some other guys has been affected with it. You've touched on Juranovic at left back there. Was there a possibility that Bernabe's had it too, and that's why he didn't come on at the weekend? But we don't know. And as far as I'm aware too, I think the game was changed prior to kickoff, not that too long prior to kickoff. So all that into the mix, going into a game of football, is not, the best place to be in. So I think that certainly had an impact on us. Would you agree there that very likely James Forrest wouldn't have been starting at Ibrox? He's a good squad player for Celtic. I'm a big champion of him. People are maybe saying he might have stuck him in there because Johnston was behind him and whatnot. But surely, had that bug not went through our team, I don't think he would have started the game.
Well, I wasn't too surprised to see him start, to be quite honest, because if you look at the last 2 games where we've played really well, who was the fixtures we had? It was Hibs away.
One of St Johnstone at home.
St Johnstone at home. These are the games where we started scoring 4 goals and stuff, and the managers, the 2 games before that, he was saying he was upset. People weren't in the positions and we weren't taking chances, yada, yada. In those 2 games, that happened. And Maeda and Forrest were the wingers in both those games, if memory serves me right. Maybe Forrest didn't start both of them, but he definitely started at least one. So I didn't consider that a huge surprise, to be quite honest with you. Because I thought when the team came out, the setup is let Maeda and Forrest run their fullbacks for as long as they can into the game, and then we've got the talent on the bench, Jota and Abada, and whoever else we can bring on later, and maybe they'll then have some time and some space to do their thing and work some magic, and maybe we've seen that a bit in the match. But to come back to something you said a second ago, talking about going gung-ho, it's something we spoke about in this podcast a good couple of times, is having that ability in a must-win game to play Giakoumakis and Kyogo. Now, Giakoumakis might not be here for too much longer, but in terms of that, been able to go, right, it's 10 minutes to go, we're losing, throw the kitchen sink at it. And we've only seen Kyogo and Giakoumakis once or twice together this season in really short spells, but I think even those little precursors that we've had earlier this season definitely helped on Monday, because if that was the first time those two guys were sharing a pitch, I don't know if we would have been quite as cohesive in that last kind of 5 minutes when we were pushing.
Yeah, and it's interesting as well because, being at the game, I heard people behind me saying, bring Giakoumakis on. I was a wee bit probably more reserved myself about that because everything that's going on in the background at this point in time. But when you look at the bigger picture, I know a lot of people said maybe getting into the game now with hindsight, which we know is a great thing. We know hindsight's a great thing, Quinny. But people are saying, that the manager got it wrong playing Forest and whatever else. He definitely got it right towards the end of the game because it was a big call to keep Kyogo on the park and bring Giakoumakis on to partner him, because I think a lot of people would have thought, the manager's rigid. I say rigid, probably not the right word, but we know if he favours a 4-3-3, it's what we see majority of the time. But we've seen us kind of go into a 4-2-4, but at Ibrox should be thinking there's no chance he's going to go into that here. He'll take Kyogo off and bring Giakoumakis on, but it's through his thought to bring Giakoumakis on for a midfielder that you end up getting that equalizer by keeping Kyogo in the park, which probably changes your outlook in his game because he wasn't really getting too much action in the game. But it's a great finish, and that's 15 goals and 18 league appearances for him. And again, I'm just glad, Quinny, that he's got that hoodoo off, about everybody saying, he's not scored in a derby game and whatever else.
Yeah. It was definitely good for him in that respect. And it was, even when that goal went in, you're kind of like, right, what was enough? We should have had like 15 minutes of added time. We only get bloody 7 or something. I think Taverniers busted nose was at least 7 minutes on its own, So at that stage when the goal goes in, we're going gung-ho. We've got Jota, we've got Abada, Giakoumakis, Kyogo, all of them are on the pitch. And, it was great to see Kyogo, get that goal, particularly at Ibrox. But time isn't really an issue for Celtic. As soon as that happens, like I say, we only think there's a couple of minutes, but there's every hope and every possibility that we can get the ball and go again.
Did you think it's probably one of the first times I've actually been a wee bit, this isn't really going to happen for us here? I've said on here a lot about Celtic kind of getting into this mentality that's almost like mental muscle, that if you're 2-1 down or chasing a winner, we go into kind of autopilot. Did you think we were going to get that chance to get that goal? I mean, before Kyogo scores that, as after he scored, I thought, listen, we can go on and win this here. We created, a fair decent couple of chances. I know everybody's talking about, we've only had 2 shots in target in the game, but you could see what we were trying to do towards the end of that game, that we're really pushing. And with the way that I'd already mentioned, Rangers substitute went, you didn't have a lot of options to go forward with.
Yeah. I think I was very frustrated at Giakoumakis when he came on. I don't think, honestly, like for the amount of times I've watched him and for all his good attributes, he cannot pass a ball. Like he cannot lay somebody. You see when everyone's talking about, the big man will hold it up. He will hold it up, but he won't give it to someone successfully. I remember one, it might have been in front of your end. I forget what we were shooting.
It was right. It was right in front of us because I remember the exact incident you're talking about. It's about 2-3 yards pass. And Rangers end up in the break. And Rangers end up in the break. Yep.
It was wild. I couldn't believe it, because he's got 2 Celtic players coming on to him. And like you say, he's trying to lay it off to 2 guys, edge of the box. There's no Rangers player in sight. But his layoff is so off that it actually sets Rangers off on the counter, And every time he does stuff like that, I'm just pulling my head out. I'm like, how can you... Yes, it sticks with him. And yeah, he's got a bit of presence. But I'm looking at the statistics now. He's missed... Bearing in mind, he's only played 1,200 minutes this year. He's missed 52 passes over 1,200 minutes. That's incredible. That's up there with, like, Kyogo has got more minutes than him and he's missed less passes. And I'm looking at guys like Welsh and Forest on similar minutes. They're not missing as many passes as him and they're doing more passing, so you would expect, that kind of thing to run through. So yeah, I don't know. In terms of like, if it wasn't going to come for us, I felt it was going to be a wee bit of it wouldn't have been down to endeavour or talent, but it would have been like the final ball just not coming off, or they just pack the box with so many bodies that it makes it hard to find like one or two guys, because we only had a couple of guys in the box. If you look at Kyogo's goal, there is only like 3 or 4 guys in there, and amongst the entire Rangers squad. So it was kind of fortuitous in that respect. It was coming. We were chapping at the door, but yeah, I wasn't like I've sent it 2-1. Thinking I cannot believe that we're in this position.
We're in this position, yeah. Much the same as you there. But while we're on the subject of Giakoumakis, we'll bring him into the conversation here. We did say we were going to mention that yesterday. We're recording this on the Thursday. A report came out from, I think he is a Greek journalist. He's been quite reliable over the past season in this, and kind of updates about Giakoumakis when he was coming to Celtic, I think, at first. And it came out, Quinny, that Midtjylland is one of the teams interested. And firstly, was that a surprise to you? Obviously, we know Celtic's got that wee bit of previous history with Midtjylland. It was the first team that Ange ever played competitively. Our former player is there as captain, Eric Sviatchenko. Were you surprised to see Giakoumakis get linked to a team like Midtjylland?
I thought Giakoumakis' aspirations would be above going to the Danish Superliga. I thought he would have wanted to go to England or into like Germany, Italy, Spain, something like that. Maybe Portugal, maybe Holland, but Denmark is like a very low-ranking division, let's say. But Midtjylland are still in Europe. They had an amazingly tough group this year, and who was in it? It was like Lazio, and it was a really star-studded group. And it was that group. I don't know if you all remember it, but after 4 games, every team was on 4 points.
Yeah, and then
so Midtjylland got through, obviously. So in Midtjylland over the last 2 years, like they sold Mohamed Kudus, which maybe some people maybe seen at the World Cup. They sold him to Ajax like the summer before for like 25 million or something. They've just sold an Arab guy, Evander, into America. So they've got money. Like they do have money. And one of the links I was seeing was like, oh, they don't want to pay 6 million or whatever. So they've got the money. They're maybe just playing a bit of hardball. And I think it might be the wages that are holding things up, because the kind of quiet reports that, kind of go around the Giakoumakis thing is that he wants more money on his pay packet. That's the primary thing. If we give him it, he'll stay. If we don't, he'll move. So I think Midtjylland, I think their wage structure will be even tighter than ours. So they would have to be pretty damn sure that he's going to, integrate and probably hang about for 2 or 3 years to warrant giving him that kind of salary.
The interesting thing about this is, I think he's 28 just now, Georgios Giakoumakis. He is. And it's much like a kind of Juranovic deal in the sense of age. At this point in your career, having came off the back, 2 seasons ago now, being top goal scorer in the Eredivisie in Holland, coming to Scottish football, scored a decent amount of goals for Celtic, practically in the second half of a season. There's a proven goal scoring record there. But at 20, you'd imagine, Quinny, it's one of those moves that, likely to be at this point. Don't want to say it's his last big move, but it possibly could be. Listen, he could go to Midtjylland, score a lot of goals and go somewhere else, but I was a wee bit surprising with it. I see that Midtjylland's, I think, transfer record's about £4 million pounds. So if they did go and buy him, it would be a record. The reported fee is between 6 and 7 million euros. Is that a surprise to you? Would you have expected more? I think that's kind of roughly where I would have valued Giakoumakis at. I think Celtic paid 2 million for him. Does the price tag surprise you on him?
I think it's a reasonable price tag, and it's one of these moves that you would hope the club. I think we would accept that money from Midtjylland. But one thing I thought when I seen that report came out is, if I'm running a championship team, I'm a manager of a championship team, and I need a striker, and I see that guy's available for 6 million, considering the amount of resources even the English Championship has available to it, I would be picking up the phone and saying, we'll do you a deal for 6 million. But I suspect Celtic would probably hold out for maybe 8 to 10 from a more, let's say, glamorous destination. You expect them to pay a bit more. So I don't know if it's more that that's the price for them, rather than that's the market price that we're trying to achieve for it.
Yeah, if it's Middlesbrough, I don't think a lot of people, Quinny, would say maybe Middlesbrough. They've just came to my head right away. Is it glamorous as Denmark? But I know exactly what you mean. More glamorous, I think, is probably what you're getting at. But yeah, what is your whole take on this? Because listen, we can only go by reports, but even if it's the pay that is the issue, there's obviously an issue in there with him too, that he's probably playing second fiddle to Kyogo. And even if Celtic do up his money at this point in time, I'd be very reserved about keeping them in and around the building, because you don't want a bad apple. And if that is one of the issues too, I think the manager will be very quick to try and move him on. I know a lot of people say, and I think it's a very valid argument at this point in January about his goals, that if anything happens to Kyogo, you weaken the team if you don't replace him properly. That is the main thing here, that if Giakoumakis is wanting out and he is causing issue, I'd like to think he's not. Celtic must find a good replacement that they know will score goals.
Well, I think it all kind of hinges on this Cho guy. I think Ange is quite happy to probably relieve us of Giakoumakis if we can get Cho Gue-sung into the building, because I think say if Giakoumakis could pass a ball, I wouldn't want him to leave, because at 28 for 5 million, what are you really gaining out of that? But it's becoming that game was just the straw that broke the camel's back for me on Monday, because honestly, I've seen it so often, and you think, oh, maybe he's just. And maybe you could even say the same thing on Monday. Maybe he's just a bit rusty. The same excuse we've given Maeda in the past. Perhaps he's due a bit of that. But I've seen enough of it since he's been here that, I don't even know if and I know statistics aren't the be all and end all, right? But I don't even think he clocks up that many assists or even successful passes, layoffs in the box or anything. So, if you are after a big guy, which Ange, this Cho guy.
One assist this season, Giakoumakis, in the Premiership.
One assist. Yeah. So, and that was against Dundee United. I was just going
to... 26 games, 1 assist, 8 goals.
Yeah, so he's not a link-up player. He's not a build-up player, in that sense. And yeah, the ball does stick to him, but if you can't give it to somebody, then it's useless, So I think this Cho guy seems to be of the same kind of build and whatever. He's a target man, kind of front foot guy. He's a bit younger, maybe he's a bit quicker. But I ultimately suspect that he will be infinitely better at build-up play. That'll be the main thing that Ange's ID'd him against, I would imagine, as well as being a target man and all the rest of it. And again, like we were saying with UK and somebody else, I forget who, but having
Iwata,
these pieces,
possibly?
Iwata it was, having these guys that are really like they're perfect, like we were talking about earlier. We need to be perfect.
Yep.
Then I think the increase in quality, because we see Giakoumakis and Kyogo share 90 minutes for the most part, right? And me and you have said it so often. You see Kyogo starting, and then after half an hour, you're saying, oh, I wish Giakoumakis started this game. He'd be on a hat-trick by now. Then you start Giakoumakis, and then you think after 20 minutes, oh, if Kyogo was on, he'd have scored by now. And we've had that kind of duality. But I think if we get a replacement for Giakoumakis in, like Cho, for example, then I think that kind of synergy of, them sharing 90 minutes, we could probably have that peak return that we had from Giakoumakis and Kyogo in a little spell over a longer time, because when Kyogo comes off and Cho or Giakoumakis comes on, if the passing standard that Kyogo gives us is still there, then brilliant. It's then, something different into the game. But if you're getting somebody who's big, but then they don't really run in behind and they can't really pass, then you're kind of losing something from Kyogo and then gaining somewhere else. And you've kind of got two halves of the same coin almost, or whereas I think with this Cho, it might dovetail better. Yeah,
no, absolutely. And I think people are still, wanting to look forward in terms of European football next season. I think it would have always been a risk had you stuck with the same two. Celtic had created so many chances in the Champions League. So I think there was always a need for another striker to come in. And even again, before Celtic entered Champions League this season, Quinny, playing a 4-3-3, I'm not too comfortable with just having two strikers. I would much prefer 3 strikers. We know that Maeda can play through there. We know that Abada's played through there. I just prefer, 3 in the building. So it'd be interesting to see if Celtic, if Giakoumakis left in January, one I think would definitely come in. Would again we go in the summer, but we don't know, because we've got another link today in Sead Hamulic, Bosnian striker from the Polish league. He's out there just now. He's scored 9 and 17, 4 assists, 2.2 million. Probably fits the bill a wee bit. He's been a bit of a surprise package over there. And he's got ambitions to play for the Bosnian national team. And obviously, much like a few of other Celtic players, they obviously see Celtic as a really good chance to come put their sail on the map and then break into the international side. That's happened to, Cameron Carter-Vickers to an extent. Matt O'Reilly's chapping at the door. Hatati made his Japan debut after joining Celtic, so there's a good link up there. We'll go back to the game on Monday. I just thought that was a good wee caveat to get into with Giakoumakis and others. It's also interesting, you mentioned Cho. There's a link to Kwon, I think it's how you pronounce his name, the central defensive midfielder. And again today, we've been linked to Ardon Jashari, I think is how you pronounce his name. He's Swiss midfielder. We played at the World Cup there. But again, interesting. I think they'd be looking for a price tag of around £6 million. And I know that's actually something, Quinny, that you talk about quite a lot about Celtic going out and kind of spending a good few quid and what I call him a super kid, but a starlet, somebody that there's a lot of potential and promise to. He's only 20 years old. RB Leipzig and on track Frankfurt are the two other teams interested in him.
Great
So
company.
at this point in time, yep, good company, absolutely. This point in time, I think Celtic probably still in the market in January 20 for a striker and possibly another number 6. Would you agree with that?
I think that Kwon is a number 6 guy, but he at the moment is playing, as I understand it, in K2, which is the second division in Korea. So he seems a much more like a project guy. Bring him in. He's definitely not going to complain about anything, and maybe similar to Deguchi in a roundabout way, but he's much younger and we can maybe hang on to him a bit longer and maybe he can come in at some point. So yeah, I think that's a bit of a background signing that, we would maybe play some B minutes here and there, who knows, cup games and whatnot. But I think the main thing that we're missing in midfield is, maybe Haksabanovic does this to an extent, I suppose, but I think we need a real talismanic, I've said this before, like a number 10, a real playmaker, creator, kind of attacking mid, because Moyes in great form. O'Reilly does that job brilliant of being like that De Bruyne kind of figure, the big attacking mid that cuddles up with the striker when we're trying to build up and all the rest of it. But we don't really have anyone, except for McGregor, and maybe Iwata will help us achieve that. Maybe you can say this about Rio, but you don't really have anyone that will come off the front line and really get into any different type of space, and they could do anything. They can play left foot, they can play right foot, they can shoot, they can pass it. And I know I'm asking for a lot here, but when you're thinking about the shape that we're playing, and especially trying to mix things up, like Turnbull's probably the most creative midfielder we have, really. Again, if you're not thinking about Haksabanovic in this kind of mould. And is Turnbull the apex kind of attacking midfielder that we want to have in the squad? Probably not. So I think that's a profile, and I think that the guy in the Swiss League is maybe a bit more in that mould. I'm not too sure. I don't know much about him. But I think that's the main miss that we've got now. I think Wata and Kobayashi and AJ have brought in huge attributes to the squad, filled massive holes in the squad depth, as it were. But for me, I think, unless Haksabanovic does come in to be a number 10 on a more regular basis, but I think that's the obvious gap that we're missing now. And that's a hard thing to find.
And that's something, again, that the manager really, really likes, is that flexibility in his players. You see it with the wingers a lot. Johnson, we know, can play a number of positions in terms of both flanks. I think he can come into the middle if you need him to. And I think Kwon as well possibly featured a wee bit of centre back too. So you've got that versatility there with some players. But it's just interesting to see some names that will be linked to it. I think positionally wise, I think we're definitely going to go for a striker. The 6 kind of defensive midfield is an interesting one. We know we've brought in Iwata, but it looks as if Hidiguchi's going to probably go back to the J League. Abelgard looks as if he's probably going to depart. McCarthy's never really made too much of an impact here at Celtic, and obviously Scott Robertson's another one, contract's up, so he's going to go. So that's 4 players kind of basically out the door and shifted on. So you need to bring in cover for that in your squad, and that's probably why we're looking at that. But we'll go back to the game on Monday and Daizen Maeda. For everything that's went against him, Quinny, about he's not clinical enough and everything else, he took that goal absolutely magnificently well. Great assists from Alfredo Morelos to play him in. By Goldson and Tavernier. 2 of them don't get anywhere near him, and it's a great finish past Alan McGregor.
Oh, it was beautiful, man. It's such a great goal for him because it really does encapsulate so many of his attributes. Tenacity, pace, direct, going on the front foot, and the finish was a real striker's finish. And I think for him, that goal probably obviously against Rangers, so of course it will, but it will mean more to him than the goal he scored. The wonder goal from outside the box, his first shot in his life outside the box, I think it was, because it shows that I'm a striker. I can do this as well. Mm-hmm. And he could be a bit of a, we're talking about all the wing options we've got, Haxa, Jota, Bada, Forrest. Maeda could be a piece that could rotate for Kyogo, as well, so his versatility. But again, people would hold their breath on that and say, the guy can't finish. But that goal against Rangers shows you that when he's on form, he's got it in him.
Absolutely. And again, I was talking the other day about this, that now we're kind of seeing the best of Maeda in 2 seasons encapsulated towards the back end of the season. He might just be one of those players that it takes a wee while to get up to speed. And when he hits it, he's right there. We saw Daizen come in after all those goals in the J League in January and be a really important part of our jigsaw puzzle. He's doing it again, and he's in really good form. At this point in time, you'd probably kind of put him under that undroppable category. And it was really funny, Quinny. I think it was about 10 minutes into the game, and it looked up at one of the big screens, and Tavernier was like that, panting and everything, and you could really see as if he was knackered in about 10 minutes, with Daizen Maeda. And it was a sub. I would have kept him in the park, because it's something, I just wish that we'd do a lot more to teams, is when we get in players' faces, particularly a player like Tavernier who likes to wander off from his position. Teams just cannot cope with that, especially with his pace and his drive at players, because he'll give you it for 90 minutes.
Yeah, I thought he was like a really difficult player to take off on Monday, because he was covering Juranovic like nothing. I think they made like 2 or 3 recovery tackles where he's underlapped, if that's a word, Juranovic, and made up the ground and came back and put pressure on, won the ball back, I think, on one occasion. So yeah, I think he was quite crucial to the game in the second half for as long as he was on the pitch. He got much longer on the pitch than what we normally see from him. And yeah, like, he does definitely seem to be that, like, he's a real form guy. He needs to be playing. We've said that before. Like, a run of games, a run of minutes is probably the best thing he could ask for. Because that's definitely the way he seems to be. He's like a momentum player, coming on and off the bench for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, miss a game, start a game. I don't think that works for him,
No, it doesn't. And we'll go to debut boy now as well, who I thought played very, very well.
Yeah.
But going into the game, Quinny, I thought, there's probably potential here that Ange could give him the nod, because after that Ralston injury, he's been there training, 2-3 weeks before the game, so there might be the managers thinking, we can really prep you right up here for this game to throw you right in. Listen, it's a big baptism of fire. We know Josip Juranovic got it as well, and he ended up playing left back in his first ever derby game, his first ever game for Celtic. But I thought Johnston played fairly well. I think you'll see a very different character and played on the pitch at Celtic Park on Saturday, and it'll be nice for him to come home and play in front of a big crowd at Celtic Park. But what a baptism of fire that is, to be thrown right in for a derby game.
He done great as well, and also I've seen him a wee bit from when he was in MLS, and like, he was the exact same. I actually found it kind of humorous in a way, because like, he was a player that I'd seen a few times without ever really paying attention to, but I instantly recognised him on the pitch with some of his runs, and he's got quite he's got quite square shoulders, I would say. I don't know what it is, but he's got quite a distinct kind of, I don't know if it's a body shape or a posture or something. But I think he impacted the game really well. He was very noticeable throughout the game. Didn't shy away from anything. The Kent goal, maybe he could have done a tiny bit better for it. Maybe got in his face a bit more, or put his body in front of the ball rather than just his leg. But beyond that,
clip,
like, yeah.
See the clip he bolts back? You've obviously seen the clip. It's absolutely phenomenal. And I remember Peter Galindo, when we spoke to him on the channel here, and I think it's like the man with 2 lungs or something they call him. It's something like that. They've got a phrase for it. I'll find it. And it showed, and he's really got that in his locker. And I don't think you've got any hesitation now that even after one game, he's probably going to be a decent enough player for us. And that replacement has already happened.
Yeah, for sure. And I think on the converse, we've not really, and again, there's an age and an experience thing that comes into this, but I don't think Bernabei would have come into this game cold or flu or whatever is going on aside, because I don't think we've seen enough from Bernabei to trust him in a game like this, which I think is the reason he went to. If Juranovic and Bernabei were both sitting on the bench with a wee bit of a sniffle and not feeling great, I think he's picked Juranovic because, like,
that's the sub I would have made, Quinny. Would you have made that sub too? That's the sub I would have made in the game, because he's played.
I would have thought Yuki would have came on.
Right, okay.
Because, but again, like, I know it's a wild one,
because he's left-footed.
Left-footed, centre-back, tuck in, be neat and tidy. That was what I thought. But and then when Juranovic comes on, you don't argue with it. You're like, hey, cool. Juranovic has done it before. He'll do it again. But wow, was he off it? Like,
he was really off it. And again, I'd spoken in the weeks, the build-up of the game. I think I'd asked you weeks ago, if we had to play him, would you play him? I had no hesitation in saying that, because I think the overall picture of Celtic retaining the league title this season is as important as it is, bringing in good money for Juranovic. But I'm sure in the weeks to come, a deal will probably be done to help Juranovic get his way to find a new club. But majorly off it. And again, going into the game at the weekend against Kelly, you might see Bernabei in there, but I also think there could be a thought in Ange's mind to play Rio Hatate in there. I've said this before, but we've saw him feature at right back, and there, he'd been described as a utility player as he was, and he played a good wee bit there for Kawasaki. So if there's any kind of potential, and Ange's thinking about, we hope Greg Taylor isn't out for too long. You might just see Rio feature there. You never know. I'm just going to throw that one out there. I know
I
you
definitely
like
wouldn't
when
rule
I
it out,
throw
mate.
things
Great
out
shout.
there. But you never know. But again, even though both you and I are saying we were absolutely cool when Juranovic came on at the weekend, I wasn't really thinking to myself, that gives you a back four that are all right-footed, and you could see that balance because you've got Starfelt beside him, who we know likes to turn onto the right foot constantly, and then when you had Jura on that side too, he's always looking to turn onto the right foot. So, you know, the balance it gave us wasn't great. You seen that Michael Beale had picked that out when he put Kent over that side to try and cause him more issues, but you know, I think that back four was saved mainly by Cameron Carter-Vickers. And again, I've seen Starfelt come in for Stick. He seems to be the one that's the constant person to get Stick. I thought it was excellent in the game at Easter Road, for instance. I think he's a good player for Celtic. You know, I know he gives away the penalty. There's a debate from some people about the penalty. I think it probably is a penalty because, you know, yeah, any kind of touch like that, a player's probably going to go down and the referee's likely to give it. It gives him the option of doing it, even though different angles maybe shows it's a callous stent in his foot.
Yeah.
But I don't think Starfelt was by any means a bad performer for Celtic in Monday. Do you, Quinny?
I think it's like, again, like you said there, like that was the only thing that was doing my nutting about Starfelt is that his passing is not great, but it looks 10 times worse because he has to come onto his right foot.
Spin,
and it forces him to take like 3 touches to move from left foot to right foot from when he's received the ball, a touch to set, then a touch to pass. And when you're doing that coming in left centre back on the right foot, like the picture that and the opportunities it opens up is dangerous. And then when the pass doesn't come off, you know, your pants are down at your ankles. You're running back to goal. So I think it looks worse than what it is. But that's also part of the reason why I think Yuki Kobayashi is going to come in for Kilmarnock, because I think now that we've had the Rangers game, the manager might just go, right, this is us now, second half of the season. I've got my left-footed centre-back in. We'll start Bernabei because Taylor's out, and then maybe a few other pieces that we spoke about as well, kind of move around. But I think now after the Rangers game being by, I think Ange will now see this as second half of the season, and we might see a wee bit more rotation, and we might see the integration of, I expect Iwata to be on the bench when he comes into the country. By all accounts, he's still in Japan, I think.
Yeah.
But I think the second half of the season will almost be a new season in the manager's eyes for the squad because of the amount of new faces and moving pieces we've got.
I would probably stick with Starfelt going at the weekend because I think we're looking at, you know, the weekend and then the semi-final of the League Cup. I think possibly a game like St Mirren at home, you know, the midweek game, and then I think we've got Morton after that, maybe with the game that he might introduce Kobayashi to see him. But I certainly think you'll see Kobayashi this month, and I think you're probably right in what you say there, Quinny. There wasn't, I don't think the manager wanted to make too many changes from that Hibs game going into Ibrox. Probably neither from the St Johnstone game in there. Whereas now he probably might treat it a wee bit more, you know, with rotation, which is something I'd asked him in a press conference, and that's something, you know, he wants to continually do. He wants to have a strong squad. He just want to have a starting 11 and 3 subs that come off the bench. You know, he wants everybody pulling their weight in to get minutes in the park. We know one man who's probably a stick on is Cameron Carter-Vickers, who was once again absolutely immense. Quinny, he doesn't probably get spoken about enough, but absolutely immense. He's just a complete rock at the back for Celtic. Absolutely fantastic performance from him once again at Ibrox.
It was phenomenal. And like, if you're going to Celtic to scout players, I don't know how people aren't, and I'm glad they're not, but I don't know why people aren't picking up the phone about Carter-Vickers, because when you look at elite football, particularly at the top end, centre-backs, yes, they have to be good at passing the ball, but the thing that Carter-Vickers gives you is he's ultimately composed. Like, you know, he's supremely composed, really cool, calm and collected. But his strength, particularly what we've seen demonstrated when we see it at a different level, if it's still as prominent, but his strength is hugely valuable in the defensive situation. We can hold off like half an army, you know, he's got it in him. And when he is cool, calm and composed, he doesn't really get booked too often. And most of his bookings, I can see his face right now. He's always like to the ref, what? You know, he's always like, most of his bookings I feel are quite unjust, you know, sometimes they're quite tactical.
And you mean like a guy of his size saying, what to you, would you? Because he's, you know, I'm really like to battle him if I was a striker. Even again, I was getting a wee bit worried that he was getting a wee bit sucked in with Morelos at the weekend, but he, you know, completely contained him within the game. But another fantastic performance. Just to kind of look at the midfield as a trio, I don't think they were bang at it at the weekend. I thought Hatate had a fairly decent game. McGregor drifted in and out of the game. I thought in the early parts he was very, very good. and drifted out a wee bit. I was reading O'Reilly's former MK Dons manager's comments today, Quinny. He's no longer
Okay.
at the club. Manning, his surname, can't remember the chap's first name. Quite interested to, just get a wee bit of insight. And I'm saying he was constantly looking at wanting to watch videos of the game. He loves the game. He's got great leadership abilities on the park and etc. etc. And is saying, that even in his maybe not at his best just now, that you really just need to trust him and he'll play his way out. I think the biggest thing with Matt O'Reilly this season is he's probably because he's not scored a goal, but he played a good wee while in that position for McGregor, which I thought he did very well at, and it's just about kind of trust him. Again, it's really, really easy to forget. I think with Matt O'Reilly, kind of that he's only 22, and maybe we seen with the manager last season that if a player's maybe going through a wee bit of sticky spell, he doesn't drop them. He just lets them play through it, and that's probably what he's going to do with O'Reilly. Even though going into the game on Monday, I probably would have been tempted to play Aaron Moy just because of the form he was getting at the game, and I thought he made a real difference to Celtic when he came on in the game.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. I would have started Moy on form, but I think like looking at Ange versus Rangers going by, like he's always played Rogic, he's always played Beaton, he's always played O'Reilly. He doesn't like somebody in there in midfield that has stature to them. So I did think it was unlikely that he would start Moy, but I think as you've seen in the game, like O'Reilly didn't really influence very much, if anything, and Moy was a notable upgrade on the team when he did come into the pitch. So I would actually expect Moy to probably start this Killie game. Maybe he tries to take O'Reilly out the firing line, but again, like you say, with the semi-final on the horizon, maybe he does just stick with the same team again, I guess. But yeah, I think Rio did okay. I think McGregor did okay, but I don't think any of the midfield particularly stood out in the game. Rangers, the way they play that kind of diamond thing with the way they kind of construct their midfield is to really choke us out, is to really choke any team out from building play up. They want you to go wide and they want you to have only a couple of bodies in the middle to try and find these passes where they can just overload and then you can't make it any much of a success. And I think McGregor and Rio did well in times to pick up some spaces and whatever, but as a three, again, this is something I've said a few times, like I don't see enough in games when those three guys go around the pitch together in some sort of aspect. They don't need to be holding hands, right? But the best midfields in the world that I've seen in my lifetime, they have, obviously you've been calling McGregor the metronome on here, which I'm totally all about. But the best midfields in the world have got like a team of them that go around and will do it in different positions. And I think our guys do that, but they get too far away from each other. And that's where the inverted fullbacks come in to like help those dots link up, as it were. Yeah. But the inverted fullbacks should be given us an overload, whereas against Rangers, those inverted fullbacks just even the numbers because they are so tight and so compact and so deep. So yeah, I don't really feel that the midfield, with the exception of me saying I don't think O'Reilly was really at it, I don't think there was really many positives or negatives from the game from the guys really.
No, I think that's a fair comment about all three of them, as a whole. And you're looking probably for a game like that your midfield really needs to step up, especially when you're playing, as you say, Rangers like to bring those two wingers in and kind of play as timed and they really cramp it in there and it becomes a bit clustered and you're looking for that overload to happen. It didn't happen too often in the game, but I thought Aaron Moy, as I say, was the real kind of difference maker at Celtic. And again, it's nice that you've got that flexibility we were talking about, bringing in our striker at the park and keeping two on. Yep. You're going to that 4-2-4 type formation. You're really trusting your two holding midfielders to do the job well. Aaron Moy certainly does that. He's involved in the attack that leads to the goal. But it's good that we've got that flexibility too in our game. I don't know how trusting the manager would have been to, put a Hatate or O'Reilly and that kind of sitting two that was there for that the rest of that game. Because it's you need a lot of discipline to do it. So, yeah, brilliant to Aaron Moy for coming on. In terms of the front three, we've already spoken about Daizen, Kyogo. I think it's fair to say, Quinny, had he not got the goal, you'd have been pretty disappointed in his performance. But Celtic's 2 shots on target, 2 goals. So, we speak about it as not being clinical enough, but we were at the weekend. And we've already spoken about Forest. And we're just hopeful that in terms of Abada and Jota and Haksabanovic, they'll all come back. I think Haksabanovic has got a wee bit of niggle injury. But a different team with those guys available. And as I say about the bug and everything that went with that, I think that definitely had an effect in Celtic. Going into the game, you've probably seen a different starting 11 But, one position in the team, which I was talking about the other day, and I know a lot of people thought I was being a bit harsh, was around Joe Hart, but I thought it was a moment in the game, to me, Quinny, that maybe it's unfair to say it changed the game, but your most experienced player in the park doing something like that, I thought got the crowd inside for Rangers, and it did. It came not long after Taylor had went off the park, so we were already at a disadvantage because you'd lost, your first choice left back, and I just don't know what Joe Hart's doing.
Yeah, he's definitely had a bit of a, what I call in my family with the kids, a brain fart there. It's just like, it's just not worked for him. Something's just happened. He's just been MIA for a second. And yeah, I don't think, I make you dead on. It's not quite game changing, but it's definitely confidence boosting, like to the players, to the opposition.
It was the first time in a game that the crowd, after we had scored, get back in the side. Ibrox was silenced after Daizen Maeda scored. The Celtic fans were singing and everything else. And then this moment comes, and then the crowd starts to get back up, and then you start to see Rangers push on a wee bit. For me, it was just because of his profile. And again, to kind of clarify what I was saying, I think he's been a fantastic signing since arriving from Tottenham last season. I think he's been really, really important to the team. But he's been openly admitting to saying he's not a sweeper keeper. We know that's very hard to get. The ball at his feet has not been his number one priority. A lot of people who watch football would say that should never be a goalkeeper's priority, is to keep the ball out of the net. Absolutely. But just for the way that we play in our build-up play, you want that to happen. You only need to take the Leipzig game, for instance, when an error leads to a goal. It doesn't happen too many an occasion. With Joe Hart, I'm certainly not saying, bin him in January, bring in Ben Siegrist. I'd probably like to see Siegrist get a wee bit more game time. Not that I think he would actually push Hart for number one. I think in the summer months, Celtic might be looking at, a new number one goalkeeper in terms of, longevity wise as well, because I think Joe Hart is around 34, 35. You need to plan for the future. But I'm not saying that just because of that moment in the game at Ibrox. I'm saying that in the whole bigger picture of things here at Celtic, that with the way that we want to play football, that I think we just need somebody who's a wee bit better suited to that in terms of long-term picture and wanting to progress and evolve and get better. And, if that meant Hart became number two, you've still got that experience and those leadership qualities in the dressing room, and you're not getting moments like that. But as I say, Quinny, that's not just because of one daft moment at Ibrox, because he comes up with a fantastic save after it. I think that kind of encapsulates him at Celtic. I don't think he could do much for the 2 goals, to be perfectly honest with you. But, I just thought, what are you doing? Because he is the most experienced player in the park for us.
Yeah, big time. I think, what do you think about this? Is there possible redemption on the cards for Barkas?
No.
I don't hear anyone try to buy him off us, and he's doing really well.
No chance. I think he's completely done at Celtic. I think he's completely done. No.
I think from the fans, I would agree. But
I think from the fans, yeah, I don't know. Again, the manager obviously at first did seem to fancy him, because remember he played against Midfield actually, and then that was him. And even again, the quickness of the transfer to get Joe Hart in, certainly City Group connections, whatever else were there. There might be somebody out there that Angie thinks suits that Celtic profile a wee bit better. I mean, I think Hart's adapted to it pretty well. But in terms of turnovers and everything else, would you agree and get the point of view that I'm coming from, Quinny, just in terms of looking at Celtic evolving and everything else with Hart's age, him admitting himself that he's not been 100% comfortable with that? I'd like him to be in and around the building, absolutely, because as I say, I think he's been really, really important. I know it's saying ditch him just now, but I just think that planning is probably coming very, very shortly for Celtic.
Yeah, I would agree, because like Joe Hart kind of falls into the Giakoumakis category for me, where he ticks the box, he does the job, he's good enough for the league, definitely. But like further aspirations, like number one, how long can you actually bank on having him in the team for? Never mind any other stuff, that goes around that. So I do think that he's definitely got a shelf life on him. There's no getting away from that at this stage. And like we've mentioned before with goalkeepers, like I wouldn't want us to go out and just get the first guy we can when Joe Hart's contract's up, or when we decide Joe Hart's no longer the guy for us. Even if it is this January, the guy that we want somehow becomes available, then sometimes you need to upset the apple cart, and just like get the guy that you need to get. And it kind of feels like Iwata has kind of been that, because we're binning 4 guys, basically, as you mentioned earlier, to bring Iwata in. So, like, I don't think the manager would, would take a pause to think about anyone's feelings or anything. He's very much club first and results first in that respect. And the term sweeper keeper kind of gets overplayed a little bit by like football analysts and whatever after like the kind of emergence of Manuel Neuer. And if anyone has ever been to Germany to watch Bundesliga football or Bundesliga 2, I've been to St. Pauli, and I can remember I went to St. Pauli 5 or 6 years ago, Bundesliga 2, and not a word of, and this was, I think, 5 or 6 years ago, so Neuer would have been mid-early 20s or so. Both goalkeepers for both teams, when their team was attacking, they were basically at the halfway line, both goalkeepers. It's like a proper, it's just, so a lot of people, when they think sweeper keeper, they think about, Craig Gordon running out the box to go and make a last man tackle against somebody or whatever. Yeah, all that stuff. That's not a sweeper keeper. A sweeper keeper is somebody more akin, and again, people at home maybe have watched the Premier League, so they'll know what I'm talking about here, but your Alisson and your Edersons, what they mainly do as sweeper keeper is they can just have like 98% pass accuracy, and they're cool, calm and collected. They don't need to sprint 30 yards out the box to be a sweeper. They just need to be an actual football player. That's all that we're kind of needing from them.
Yeah. And again, just to be look there, Joe's contract is up next summer, 2024. So that's why I'm just saying, the whole picture building and everything else that the manager talks about evolving, I think is why. I'm not saying it based on, one blunder at Ibrox, because he made a blunder in Leipzig, and I wasn't saying drop him. I don't think he should be getting dropped because of that. I was just saying in terms of the plan, and I think that process is probably going to start, and maybe just wee examples of that are probably why it starts. And again, as I say, he's 36, so come, contract in the old time, be 37. I know McGregor's 40, but you kind of want that planning process to happen. I'm not saying enough. I think Siegrist's only played twice for us since arriving from Dundee United to say why, he should be coming in for Joe Hart. Certainly not the case for me. I'd imagine Siegrist will play against Morton. You never know, he might play the Cup semi-final against Kelly. He's been the League Cup keeper. But we'll just see how that goes.
One thing I was just going to say there, Declan, as well, sorry, but like, see the last 3 guys we've kind of spoke about there, like Hart, Starfelt and Giakoumakis, like that game really shows why we need to upgrade on them over the next 12 to 18 months, because like Starfelt being left centre-back on the right foot against Rangers, we've seen how difficult that can be for him, But imagine next year when we go back into Europe, there's going to be much tougher teams to play than Rangers. Same with Giakoumakis and his lack of actual, build-up play or interplay with the forwards. And then Joe Hart, as we're talking about with that, he's just not got all those modern attributes to his name. So I think that game kind of shows maybe some Celtic fans that have been really loyal to all these guys. And, we all want to be loyal to everyone at the club. I'm not saying don't. But when people say, oh, we should sell him and upgrade him, there's always like, no, you must be mad. This guy's so good. And Giakoumakis scores goals, Starfelt's clean sheet record, and all that kind of stuff. But when you actually watch that game, you do see what's missing. You do see what they don't bring, And I think that when you think about when that does get brought in by, like, I'm saying Kobayashi, maybe Cho, maybe another goalkeeper in the future, it can't be understated how much better that makes everyone else around them.
And it's back into the manager's conversation about evolving as a club and trying to progress, which is what everybody wants. Football can be a very harsh game sometimes, and
Indeed.
It's just how the cookie crumbles for some players. Just in terms of, looking, as I said earlier on, it's 13 games before the split, 8 at home, 5 away. Rangers have the flip of that. They're 5 at home, 8 away. I don't like saying title races are finished, Quinny. I think it's premature to do that. We don't know what could happen, but Celtic 9 points clear, 2 derby games to go. That in itself, I think we're in a really good position, and we don't have, the 2 games that we had last year in the Conference League against Bodo. So really just now, the fixture calendar is clear, and we've got a great chance as well this month to book our place in another cup final, which is a great boost to the team. I know the League Cup's probably a trophy that means quite a good bit to a lot of the players, and then the chance to progress in the Scottish Cup. So at this point in time, the picture looks good, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I'm just looking at the details. The only away fixture that's, I suppose we've got St Mirren away, which wasn't too good for us earlier this year, but Ross County away is maybe the only other one. But all the big games we've got in the final half of the season, I'm going to put Livingston in that category. They're all at home. We've got Livy at home, Aberdeen at home, Hearts at home, Hibs at home, Rangers at home. Motherwell at home before the end of the season. So it feels like we've done a lot of the hard yards already with the difficult away trips. Just going to Easter Road the other week there. Tynecastle wasn't too long ago, if memory serves me. Also Ibrox on Monday.
Late October.
Yeah, so like we've been through we've probably had the hardest period of fixtures in terms of away games, congestion of fixtures as well, pre-World Cup and all the rest of it. So like I kind of mentioned earlier, I think now we're going to see a real like second or almost like kind of mini season within this season now, maybe with some of the new faces coming in and obviously the trophies we're going to go and win.
Well, we hope that there'll be trophies to win. Just in terms of Kyogo's actually goal scoring, Quinny, I think it's fair to mention this again. Maybe surprising, again, not the right term, but 15 goals in 18 appearances in the league is absolutely fantastic for him. He's really turned it around coming back off the World Cup. And you're seeing players kind of come into their own, which is, again, bleeds into that conversation that you're having there within a kind of second season. Within a season at this point in time, just due to where that World Cup break came, and you're seeing players like, Moy and Daizen hit form after the World Cup, which is excellent to see. And as I say, everything at this point in time builds into a really good picture. It would have still been fairly positive, I think, had we had a 6-point advantage. That the goal difference is so high at this point in time. I think it's 20. Obviously, had we not get that goal, it'd be 19. But you'd be sitting still saying, 8 home games, 5 away games. If we throw this away, it would probably be a disaster.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that for sure. Because, this is all pre-split, so we've obviously got the split to go as well after these games where you'll play the top 5 each time once, random selection of home and away. So yeah, it would have to be we would have to, if we didn't get any points on Monday, it would have had to been a total old firm swing, and it would have been kind of like in that respect a bit of a throwback season in essence, But yeah, I would agree with you. The fixture list for the run into the season, the form of Kyogo, Rio, even McGregor's form coming back from injury has probably been the best under Ange, I would say. A lot of guys are coming into the best phase of the season now, and like I've mentioned a few times, these new faces coming in, like we've seen with Rio and Maeda last year, new blood just keeps everything like high tempo, high octane. Got to fight for your position, got to win, got to score. Can't make a mistake.
And it'll be interesting to see how that works, because as you've already pointed out, we've seen Johnston fired right into the team. I think you're going to start to see him a lot more often. It's where Kobayashi then comes in, and then Iwata, and then what that does to your midfield, and then anything else, if another striker comes in, and even if a number 6 comes in, because players are going to want game time and whatever else. Good result too. I think it's important to touch on this just before we kind of finish off. We've had the special with Darren Day. If you've not watched it, please do. Quinny, so you don't get it tight in the comments. You said an old firm swing there. You're obviously referring to the old firm swing that happened.
It's a throwback.
11 years ago, a throwback. Yeah, so that's why you'd said that. But we've had Darren Day on as a special. It was a derby game on Friday against Rangers B at Celtic Park. A great result. And last night, 4-0 against Civil Service Strollers. B team looked really good, and for everybody that's kind of long to see them and any kind of flashes I've seen of the B team when I've been able to watch them, Quinny, you're starting to see what Danaday says in that podcast last week with us, that they are trying to incorporate what the first team's doing into the B team, which can only serve as that pathway. It was great to see Rokovata come on last week, they've already mentioned.
Yes.
Big Label's champing the door. I think he was Ireland Under-19 Player of the Year for 2022. Wow. There's a good wee mixture of players in there that, can't be too far away, which again is going to be really interesting towards the end of the season, because as time will go on and you maybe get into that wee bit more of a comfortable position, it's the exact time that we want to see some of these guys come in. And even kind of after speaking to Darren on that podcast, Joey Dawson getting linked to Inverness, for everything that Darren Day is saying, both Darren and Stephen McManus, I think, would rather keep them within the building, playing the way that Celtic want to play, so that transition then becomes much easier.
Yeah, I think that's, you need to know the individuals to really pass much comment on that. I don't really know too much, to be quite honest, on that side of things with the individual player we're talking about. But I think that's probably the hardest part of having a guy like Ange be so successful at Celtic, is that when he's gone, because it will happen at some point, no one stays at a club for 100 years, do you continue that? Do you change tactic? Do you bring somebody else in who's totally different? Yada, yada. But the hardest part of keeping that success going, that we've not had with any Celtic manager in my lifetime, certainly, is that succession planning. So the fact that the B team are really kicking on, I would imagine that's going to filter down to 19s and 16s and whatever. And if we do, and again, I listen to a lot of Celtic fan media, if we are going to try and come into this realm of the player trading model and mix it with the Salzburgs and the Bruges of the world and whatever, then we need an academy that can feed the first team, right? And we all know that, right? That means producing good players. But what it also means is players that fit the system, because some guys might not be amazing youth players, but they're very good and they can operate in the system. And it's not until maybe they're 23 or 24 where you're really, wow, this guy's a real player all of a sudden. And I think that's the hardest part of all this to achieve, is that academy buy-in, that follow through. Because I know from being a coach, if you're an academy coach, maybe Celtic's a bit different, right? But most coaches aspire to move up, and because they aspire to move up, they want to fall on their own sword. This is a team I picked, this is the tactics I picked, this is the strategy, yada yada. And that's why a lot of youth academies can be relatively disjointed. I think Dundee United do a pretty good job of avoiding this, to be honest. But yeah, so that's my point, because going through the years with Celtic, if you look at B teams and under 20s and whatever, they could just do what they wanted, which is fine. We'll play 4-3-3, we'll play 4-4-2. It doesn't really matter. Oh, this guy's good, we'll sell him. This guy's good, we'll promote him. But hearing that makes me really happy, because I then think, well, the players we're bringing through, if Ange does play any of them, start them, bring them off the bench, whatever, then there's so much less worry as a fan that, is this guy, he's playing a right back, does this guy know what he's in for today, playing right back for us? You don't have that, because they've been brought up through it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the exciting thing about it, and we'll see how it goes. Again, one of the things that Darren was quite intent in saying was that whatever position Celtic finish in the Lowland League this season isn't the most important objective. It's about developing players, getting them to a standard where they can be first team ready and be promoted to the first team and make an impact at the club. Quinny, good catch up. First one of 2023, probably many more between you and I on the channel. If you've been with us since day one, thanks for all your support. Please do continue to like all the videos. If you're not already subscribing to the page, please do so. We've seen a good wee jump in that. We're trying to produce good content. It's why we can bring you stuff like the weeks with Dan a day, and hopefully have some other guests on in the coming weeks. Just to finish off, I think that the whole Celtic family were really saddened to hear of the passing of former striker Frank McGarvey. It was really touching that Frank was able to say his last goodbye to the Celtic support only a few months back on the part with his daughter. In the 5 years he played for Celtic in the early 1980s, he scored 113 goals. He lived the dream wearing green and white hoops. He was a Celtic fan both on and on the pitch, and a fighter to the very end. So for everyone at CeltsAreHere, we send our very best thoughts and wishes to Frank McGarvey's family, and may he rest in peace.